I guess it is reasonable on my part to assume that no student will come today for this class because they have an exam tomorrow. But I'm going ahead with the class so that I can finish the syllabus. And apart from that, anyway, since this is on YouTube, and everyone has the YouTube URL of mine. And apart from that, I am also posting the specific URLs of particular lectures on the WhatsApp group of each of the classes that I'm engaging, so they can, at their own leisure, at their own convenience, access this particular class or the ones before that as well. Uh, Today I'll be picking up uh, Sant Ravidas, and I once again repeat what uh, I had said when I was talking about Kabir Das. Uh, these Bhakti movement sons are loosely called saints, and that should not be done because saint has a specific meaning, and this specific meaning is something that comes from it comes from Christianity. And in order to be sainted, you have to perform miracles. uh, it is three miracles, I think, and only then will you be sainted. So most of the saints of Christianity are posthumously declared as saints, so to speak. Uh, Whereas while these people were living, they were called sants. I did say when I was talking about Kabir Das that since English is an Indo-European language, the root of saint and sant is the same, the root. But once the word becomes saint or once it becomes sant, then the meaning changes completely. A sant is somebody who is uh, more like a wise man, uh, a person with spiritual leanings, and also uh, somebody who's a guru. He can also be called a sant. So, sant is not the same as saint. Uh, that has to be remembered. So, please do not write the word saint when you talk about Indian sons. Uh, anyway, so let us come to Ravidas. There are these two spellings that you see in front of you. Both have been used by different people. The more common spelling is the first one, Ravidas. This is the more common spelling, and I believe that this should be the spelling, because if you go by whatever poor phonetics that the English language has, Ravidas will be Ravidas. Ravidass will become Ravidas. Uh, so that is not his name. So I would suggest that you stick to Ravidas, but I am also I putting that other spelling. I have put it there because uh, people shouldn't get confused and think that these are two different people. Uh, anyway, uh, as is the case with a lot of these mystics, they are also called seers, Seers. They're called sants in the Indian language, gurus. Uh, and especially the Bhakti movement people, most of them have legends built around them. And quite a few of these legends are in the realm of the impossible. Uh, the simple instance being the story that Kabir Das was born out of the hand of his mother. We all know that those things cannot happen. So there are quite a few legends surrounding these people. And these legends add to the confusion rather than clarification. So, my strategy for dealing with this kind of a situation is to simply say that I'll ignore the legends uh, because they cannot be proven. Uh, so, there is no point in talking about them. I'll probably just I'll probably just talk about uh, I'll probably just talk about the non-legendary and the more realistic aspects of uh, of uh, this person. Sorry, I got distracted. Somebody entered, and yeah, I'm very sorry about that. Now we don't have his date of birth for sure. We don't have his date of death for sure, as it has been with the case of the South Indian Bhakti movement uh, people, namely the Alvars, about whom I talked about in the last this thing when I was talking about uh, when I was basically talking about uh, Nammalvar. I did say that uh, you know um, we are absolutely not sure because the time spans that people specify, they vary uh, from time periods in the BCE to the time periods in the CE. So anyway, Ravidas was a Bhakti Sant, and the Bhakti movement did reach the northern part of the country uh, much later than it was in the southern part of the country. It was much before the northern part of the country. The southern part of the country saw the Bhakti movement, and then it went to the northern part, and there seems to be a seminal figure there. And this seminal figure who is there uh, in in the northern part of the country is Guru Ramananda, who is also considered to be a Bhakti Sant. Uh, Kabir Das was most definitely his. Kabir Das was most definitely his. I'm sorry. Kabir Das was most certainly the student of Ramananda, uh, and Ramananda was from Varanasi. Uh, the same thing uh, can be said about Ravidas. Ravidas also is supposed to be, according to some, the student of uh, Guru Ramananda. Now, the problem is that uh, Ravidas apparently belonged to an untouchable caste. And while I am talking about the untouchable caste, I would like to insert a uh, parenthesis kind of explanation here, because uh, when we talk about castes, today most of our uh, discourse in India on caste is something that has come from the Ambedkarite school of thought and from Ambedkar himself. And he portrays it, in my opinion, and my considered opinion, he portrays it in a very, very simplistic manner, and it's all in black and white. Whereas the caste system, if we don't use that word at all, and we talk about varnas and jatis, and even after the varna system converted into a jati system, even then the rigidity of the caste system that uh, uh, Ambedkar talks about is not to be found even as uh, late as the 14th and 15th centuries. Okay, and if you are talking about Ravidas, Sant Ravidas, for example, we are essentially talking about the 15th and 16th centuries. Okay, and despite having come from a so-called untouchable jati, I'll use that term, he became a sant. And therefore, I would like to make one point of clarification here. The point of clarification is that whether it is the Chaturvarna system or the Panchamajati system, the Panchamajati system, the addition is the untouchables. Uh, it does appear that people had access to education. People did have some kind of standing in society if they showed themselves uh, as being wise and worthy of devotion. So you can therefore stop looking at this Varna and the Jati system as a petrified thing. And what I mean by petrified is that something that is solidified and it cannot be changed. That is not true. Even in the 20th century, M.N. Srinivas says, even though it was not possible for individual mobility in jati groupings, there was a possibility of groups of people moving from lower castes into upper castes. Okay, I have given the examples in Andhra Pradesh of Reddis and the Kammas who moved out of the lower castes. And in quite a few instances, people all have also designated themselves as a particular caste. For example, the kings of Vijayanagaram, not the Vijayanagara empire of Hampi. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Vijayanagaram near Vishakhapatnam. They call themselves Rajus, but their caste is Velama. They call themselves Rajus and they say they're Kshatriyas, which they are not. And the Kakatiyas are an obviously Shudra dynasty, but there is a bone of contention between the Reddis and the uh, Kammas, who now like to be called Chaudhries, though they have nothing to do with the Chauta tax that gave them the particular title. These people claim that they were Kshatriyas and they belong to the Kakatiya dynasty. So if you look at the number of castes, as they are now called, if you look at all these castes, they do not fit into either the Chaturvarna system or into the Panchama Jati system. They don't fit into those. Okay, people are forcibly fitting them in there. Sometimes people are claiming that they belong there, like the Rajputs claim that they were Kshatriyas, saying that we were the sons of kings. Now, a Kshatriya need not have been a king. If you read the Rig Veda carefully, you will find that the Kshatriya is a brave person, a courageous person, a strong person who's capable of fighting. It has nothing to do with a holding of a post called a kingship, right? Being a king or a ruler, no, it didn't have anything to do with that. And I have gone through this, so I'll just make that point in one line and leave it at that, which is more Shudra dynasties have ruled India in the ancient period than any other Varna. Okay, and therefore it is nonsense to simply adopt this Ambedkarite scholarship unquestioningly and try to fit everything into that pre-existing model. It isn't as simple as that. It isn't as simple as that. I know I'll be in trouble for saying this, but this is an unnecessary deification of Ambedkar. Ambedkar was a great man. I will not deny that. Uh, but Ambedkar himself was able to go to uh, Columbia University. He was able to go to Oxford University. So it's not as if all people suffered. They didn't. And one striking example of fitting people into various different castes, when I was talking to about the Alvars, I said there are so many castes or so many self-described groups like Vellalars, Kallars, who don't fit into the Chaturvarna system or the Jati system. They don't fit into those. Okay, so these were different groupings altogether. So at one level, maybe it makes sense. I will put one lecture on how Varna may have been something which is uh, a way of looking at how to have different people performing different roles in society. It might not have anything to do with hierarchy and all that. I've been doing a bit of research on it, and now I feel confident enough to say this. So I will put a lecture later on that. It's not as a part of the syllabus, but I definitely will put a lecture on how it was something which was more in the nature of people wanting that kind of a system, where you clearly divide who does what. But ultimately, it might not have been so. Now, if you take the case of Ravidas himself, he's supposed to have come from an untouchable background. Nobody knows who his parents were. Uh, but the legend is that they worked with leather products. Now, what does that mean? They worked with leather products. What does that mean? It basically means they worked with leather products. Okay, it's a certain form of employment. There are a number of people who work with different things. All right. So now, because they worked with uh, leather products in the 20th century and in the 21st century, as I proceed further with this, you will realize what I'm saying. In the 20th century and the 21st century, they immediately attributed the Chamar caste to him. Whereas there is nothing in Ravidas to suggest that he was from a Chamar caste. Maybe his parents worked with leather, but that doesn't make them Chamars. I will tell you a real anecdote. I had gone to attend a refresher course, which is mandatory for teachers. And there was a well-known caste scholar who, while talking about the caste system, said Joseph Stalin, the ruler of the Soviet Union, belonged to the Madiga caste. And I was stupefied. I was completely stupefied. I was stunned. I said, on what basis are you saying that? I stopped him in the middle. Usually one doesn't do that. But when somebody says that Stalin belonged to the Madiga caste, then I stopped him immediately and I said, what do you mean by this? He was a Russian. Russians don't have a caste system. And how can they have this Madiga caste system? How can he be a Madiga? Madiga is native to only the Telugu speaking parts of the country, which was previously only one. And that one was Andhra Pradesh when it was not divided. Now it is Telangana. And, the idea of uh, uh, the residuary Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so this caste is there only here. And you're saying he's a Madiga. I said, how did you come to this conclusion? He said, do you know what Stalin's father did? I said, yes, I do. So he says, so then why are you asking me this question? I said, what has his father doing something got to do with my asking you this question? He says his father was a cobbler. So what was he working with? He was working with leather. Madigas work with leather. So Stalin was a Madiga. I was completely taken aback. I saw no point in even engaging in a conversation with this particular person, because if you are saying that a Russian is a Madiga, then there cannot be anything more ridiculous than that. And this new word that is not a new word, it has been there for quite some time, Dalit. It was used by Jyotirao Phule originally to show, it's a Marathi word which says those who are oppressed. Okay, those people who belong to the oppressed sections of society. Uh, Ambedkar picked that word up, and now people believe that Dalit and Dalitism is something that Ambedkar talked about first. He didn't. He was not the first to talk about Dalit. Okay, he applied it to what ultimately became the scheduled castes. Okay, and these scheduled castes are not universal. I don't know if you people were born then. We had a president called K.R. Narayanan. K.R. Narayanan belonged to a scheduled caste, and he was a diplomat. He served the country very well, especially as ambassador to China. He served the country very well, but he almost shamed himself as the president of the country because there was some kind of census or something taking place, and people were asked to fill in their caste name, and a list of castes was given, and you had to tick which caste you belong to. Okay, you had to tick which caste you belong to. And the caste that K.R. Narayanan belonged to was not there in that list. The reason for that is very simple. Madiga is not there in that list. Mala is not there in that list. Vellalars are not there in that list. Kallars are not there in that list. Why? Because they are these regional castes. They are extremely regional castes, these. So he went and raised a hue and cry and said, if I as a president am treated like this, what is the, uh, you know, condition of other people? Which is, in my opinion, utter nonsense. Your caste is not there in that list because in North India, your caste doesn't exist. Okay, just doesn't exist. So we say that we want to get rid of the caste system, but at every step, we take whatever measures we can to strengthen the caste system. That is unfortunate part of this country. I'm being very brave because this is going to be out in the public domain, and I'm being critical not only of Ambedkar, but also of K.R. Narayanan, who is a president. And I'm also critical about Jyotirao Phule. Jyotirao Phule he was a contractor. Now people call him Mahatma Phule. He was a contractor with the British. He built the Yerwada jail near uh, Pune, and freedom fighters of India were imprisoned by the British in the Yerwada jail. And he converted to Christianity. And by converting to Christianity, he took advantage of giving support to the British administration. People don't know this. Okay, he was a contractor of the British, right? So we have become, our looking at history is becoming more and more microscopic. We are looking at it more and more microscopically only through a caste lens. Only through a caste lens. And therefore, we miss out larger details. Anyway, so to come back to the point, I took a bit of time because yesterday I saw in the Zoom this thing that says that for some time, thanks to COVID, they are giving unlimited time. That is how yesterday I was able to take a class for 1 hour, 35 minutes. So,
Okay, sir.
yeah, so that's why I took a little bit of time anyway. Even if you were not there, Kavya, I would still have said all these things. Uh, anyway, So I've been emboldened by the fact that I have time. And so I thought I'll make this point. But I do want to talk about the Varna system, the Jati system, and the caste system. I will do it after I finish teaching these. So the Chamar caste has been attributed to Ravidas, because the only details that we have are that his parents worked as leather workers. Now you cannot take the case of Raja Harishchandra. Raja Harishchandra became a smashan keeper. Hmm. He was in charge of a smashan. He was a kshatriya. Now, just because he was in charge of a smashan, do you say he was a katikapari? You won't say that. You won't say that. Okay. There are a lot of people today who are not Brahmins who are teaching. Do you say that they are all Brahmins? You don't. Or there are a lot of Brahmins who are doing an electrician's work or some other work. Or more importantly, if you go to Tamil Nadu, some of the biggest industrialists like TVS, uh, TTK, the Lakshmi Narayan Group, these are all Brahmins. So do you say they are Vaishyas because they're doing business? So there has to be some kind of, moderation on the way in which we look at these things. Okay, just simply looking at one aspect of a thing and attributing a caste to that person is not the done thing. And how ridiculous this became will become more obvious as I proceed further. Okay, so he is supposed to have been born uh, around 1450 CE. This is what a philologist, I forget her name, she uh, basically dated his birth around 1450 CE, and that he died around 1520 CE. Her name is some Elizabeth Lum, I think. I'm not very sure. Anyway, but these dates are uncertain. It is, like I told you, a philologist is one who takes either a written work or a spoken word and they match it with the history and they try to find a date. Okay, so this is not a recorded date, but it is a date that a philologist has suggested as a possible date of birth and date of death. What is known for sure is that Ravidas was a sant, he was a mystic, he was a poet, he was also a guru, and he was somebody who was revered in the northern part of the country, the western part of the country, that is Maharashtra, Gujarat. There are devotees of Ravidas, and Punjab. He had a great influence on Sikhism, uh, and not to speak about states like Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, all these, the present geography. Those states didn't exist then. I'm talking about it so that you understand the geographical region where he was very, very influential. And he was a Bhakti Sant. There is no doubt about that. Uh, he also was venerated in the central part of the country, which is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, all these parts which are there now. Okay. Some people say that he is a contemporary of Kabir Das. Uh, and like Kabir Das, he had a great influence on Sikhism. Okay. But actually, if you look at history that is available to us, more than Kabir Das, Ravidas had a greater influence on Sikhism. Not to say that Kabir Das didn't have uh, any influence on Sikhism, but a bigger influence, a greater influence was definitely Ravidas. Okay, and Ravidas was a mystic. A mystic is somebody who doesn't speak very clearly. By that, I don't mean clarity of speech, but mystics make statements that are loaded with uh, possibilities, different kinds of possibilities. Now, one particular saying of his, which influenced Guru Nanak, but I'll talk about Guru Nanak a little later, but this I'll talk about now. One particular statement of his about Guru Nanak is, that was recorded by Guru Nanak, is that Ravidas said that in front of God, in front of God, every human being is an untouchable. Okay, every human being is an untouchable in front of God, because God personifies beauty, grace, and kindness, qualities which are not there in most human beings. And therefore, he said we are untouchables. Okay. Now, is this the statement that led to the idea that he was an untouchable? I do not know. I do not know that. Okay. Because there are three recorded books which talk about Ravidas. Okay. And these books, I'll talk about them as I keep coming to them. They have shown him, they have shown him as a person, except one book out of the three. Uh, they have shown him as somebody who was even venerated by the Brahmins. Okay. Uh, he was in Varanasi, and he was a student of the Guru and Bhakti poet Ramananda. Uh, and Ramananda had a great influence on him. And he was also a contemporary of Kabir Das, who was also a disciple of Ramananda. Okay, so this school of thought advances the argument that Ravidas was very proficient in Sanskrit. Okay, he was extremely proficient in Sanskrit, and he had extensive knowledge of the Vedas, the Vedangas, the Upanishads, and the Vedanta in itself. He was a Vedantic scholar. You can put it that way. Okay, but he preferred to write his poems in Braj Bhasha because he wanted more people to read his poems. But he was very fluent in Sanskrit and all the uh, texts that are associated with ancient India, with Sanatana Dharma. Okay, in fact, one account says that the Brahmins did Sashtanga Namaskara to Ravidas, uh, which is Sashtanga Namaskara is lying down, completely prostrating yourself at somebody's feet. So Brahmins also are supposed to have prostrated themselves, done the Sashtanga Namaskara in front of Sant Ravidas. Such was his reputation, apparently. Uh, the school claims that Ravidas spent most of his time on the banks of the river Ganga because various sadhus, sants, sannyasins, and holy men came to the Ganga for their bath, and Ravidas engaged with them in conversations regarding matters of bhakti, spiritualism, and that is how his knowledge of Sanskrit and everything came into being. This information that I have so far given is found in a particular compilation, a text, which is one of the oldest, uh, what should I say, surviving texts of the Bhakti movement. And this text is called Ananta Das Parchai, Ananta, Ananta Das Das, Parchai, Parc. If you want to write it with the phonetic thing, you have to put a line on top, or you can write Parchai. Parchai. Parchai is a shadow, technically. So this work is supposed to be the shadow of all the Ananta Dasas. I mean, the endless people who have been servants of God. These people, so their shadows are reflected in this particular text. And this is one of the books, one of the texts that has the biographies of the earliest sadhus and sants and the gurus of the bhakti movement, so to speak. Now, this book is one that glorifies Ravidas the way we have seen. It says that he had commanded the respect of the Brahmins and even the Brahmins, which seems to be, if you actually look at it, that Brahmin as a group, not as a caste, because Brahmanism is not a monolithic caste. Brahmins are of different varieties, they have different rituals, but they are called Brahmins. But they seem to be the only pan-Indian phenomenon, though there is very little in common between a South Indian Madhva Brahmin and a North Indian Saraswat Brahmin. There is very little in common between them. Okay, they are just called Brahmins. Anyway, that's a different issue. So there you say that this book, the Ananta Das Parchai, whose author is not known, it's a recording of all the sons, and it has this recording of Ravidas that I have talked about so far. The other work that is well known is called the Bhakti Mal. Okay, you have to write it either as BHAK, not Bhakti, Bhakta, BHAKTAMAL, and in on the Mal, the A that comes after the M, you have to put an accent on top. If you don't want to do that, you can write Bhakti Mal with MAAL. Okay, it's not Bhakti Mal. That that is, or Bhakta Mal. Sorry, why, I don't know why I'm saying Bhakti. It is Bhakta Mal. What is a Bhakta Mal? A Bhakta Mal is a garland of the Bhaktas. Mal, I told you once before uh, that the North Indians cut short the end A. They don't like to pronounce, or they don't pronounce for whatever reasons, the A that is there. So Bhargava becomes Bhargav. Okay. And when I get phone calls from credit card companies and other such people, when they speak in Hindi, they say, Satish Chandra ji se baat kar rahe hain kya? And I tell them, I'm Satish Chandra, not Satish Chandra. Chandra. But they don't say that. So similarly, this is Bhakti Mala actually. But since the North Indians do not use the A at the end, it becomes Bhakti Mal. There is a character in the Ramayana, I think, who was called Anguli Mal because he wore uh, a garland of thumbs of people that he had cut off. He would make, and he made a garland of that and wore. And he was called Anguli Mal. Anguli is the thumb. Okay. So Anguli Mal should have been Anguli Mala actually, but they say Mal. So Bhakta Mal is a documentation of all the Bhakti saints and the non-Bhakti Bhaktas also. Okay, all kinds of Bhakts. Okay, all these people except Modi Bhakts, all of them are supposed to be in this particular work. And this work has been written in Braj Bhasha, a Bhasha that was uh, preferred, or a language that was preferred by uh, Ravidas himself. And it produces, and it has very short biographies. It is also a biographical work, exactly like the Anantadas Parchai. Anantadas Parchai has longer accounts, longer biographies, whereas this particular work has very short biographies of over 200 bhaktas. Uh, and all these 200 bhaktas are not necessarily bhakti sants. Some of them are different gurus of different pantheons. Uh, Unlike the Anantadas Parchai, whose author we are not aware of, the author of the Bhakti Mal is a known person. He himself was a guru, and his name is Nabhadas, Nabha, Nabha, Das, Das. Some people again write double S, but please don't write double S because then it'll become Nabhadas. Okay, Nabhadas has to be written with a single S. Uh, some people consider this to be a hagiographical text and not a biographical text. Okay. Uh, a hagiography is also a documentation of the lives of, uh, in the context of Christianity, of the lives of saints and other people. But I will get to a point where I will talk about uh, the changing meaning of hagiography. So people say that this is more of a hagiography than a biography, because biography will have more personal details, whereas a hagiography, Hagiography, a hagiography is something that is supposed to have more details of the learning of these people. And Natha Das is supposed to have compiled this hagiography. And Natha Das also belonged to the uh, school of devotees of Ramananda. And this particular school of devotees was actually called the Ramanandi Sampradaya. Ramanandi, not Ramananda, but Ramanandi Sampradaya. Write a double A after S. Not Sampradaya, it is Sampradaya, which is a tradition. Okay, so it basically means that it is a tradition of Ramananda. Okay, this work does not contain stories of miracles about any of the bhaktas, okay, including Kabir Das. That story of his being born from the palm, that is not there in this. In this particular book, there is no miracle or anything supernatural being uh, mentioned. It is also supposed to be a very objective account of different bhaktas of different sects. Now, that is a contestable claim. It is a contestable claim because when a subject is writing a book, how objective can it be, is the question. And this question comes up immediately because uh, though the book does say that Ravidas was there at that time, it does not acknowledge him as a direct disciple of Ramananda. So Nabhadas, Guru Nabhadas, as he's called, excluded Ravidas from the Ramanandi Sampradaya. He excluded him. But this is contested, very, very much contested by a contemporary book, not later on, by a contemporary book uh, which was titled Ratnavali. Okay, Ratnavali, Ratnavali, uh, and this was a, this book was written by a student of Ramananda whose name is not known, but he is vociferous in his argument that Sant Ravidas belonged to the tradition of Ramananda or the Ramanandi Sampradaya. That is what this particular person, whoever he is, who wrote this book called the Ratnavali, which came out around the same time, around when the Bhakti Mal came. Okay, and Ratnavali claims that the initiation of Ravidas into the Bhakti movement was done personally by Guru Ramananda. Okay, and it also says that Guru Ramananda imparted Sanskrit education to to Ravidas. Okay, so the Ratnavali claims that Ravidas is an absolute contemporary of Kabir Das, whereas the Bhaktimal claims that they were not real contemporaries. Uh, Ravidas came many years after Kabir Das. So they say he's much younger. If at all he was a contemporary, he's much younger, is what the Bhakti Mal claims. But the Ratnavali text basically claims that these people or rather, they were uh, absolute contemporaries. Okay, and the Ratnavali documents the fact that Kabir Das and Ravi Das met a number of times uh, while being students of Ramananda, and they exchanged ideas between themselves, that is between Kabir Das and Ravi Das, and also exchanged ideas with their teacher, who was Ramananda. So this is the third book, Ratnavali, which gives us this account. So the Anantadas Parchai and Ratnavali seem to agree with each other, whereas the Bhakti Mal is something that doesn't seem to agree with this. There is a very interesting thing that one finds in the Ratnavali about Ravidas, which is that people say that he began his bhakti, uh, what should I say? He began as a sant who believed in monotheism. Okay, monotheism is only one God, and he believed that this one God who existed is anthropomorphic. An anthrop in Latin, Anthrope. Anthrop is a human being. Okay, so anthropomorphic essentially means one who looks like a human being. Morphology is the external characteristics of somebody. The appearance of somebody is a morphology. What is inside is the anatomy. Okay, so anthropomorphic means that this God that uh, Ravidas talked about looked like a human being. Okay, but he believed that there was only one God, unlike polytheism, which talks about a number of gods. And he also is supposed to have claimed that this anthropomorphic God, apart from being beautiful and graceful, these are all qualities. Please remember that. Was and kindness and all. So he says, since he had all these qualities, he was a saguna sampanna. Now, guna is a characteristic, or and why or? Let's stick to characteristic. somebody who has certain characteristics which are good is called saguna. One who has characteristics which are bad is called durguna. Okay, so he says that this anthropomorphic God is saguna sampanna. This God has all the good qualities. You can use the word quality instead of characteristics if you want. He had all the good qualities and characteristics that existed in the world. And that is why this God became a God. That was the argument that Ravidas had. And it is believed that he had initially argued with Kabir Das about it, because Kabir Das is somebody who believed in the Nirguna Brahman. Okay, the Brahman is the universe itself. So that is pantheism. When you say that the universe itself is a life system, then that is pantheism. And Nirguna is that he does not have any characteristics or any qualities. Nirguna is without any qualities or characteristics. This was the uh, view that Kabir Das held, and I had discussed this in great detail when I spoke about Kabir Das. Okay, so uh, there is apparently an instance when they both argued with each other about the nature of God, where Ravidas argued that God was Saguna Sampanna and was anthropomorphic, uh, uh, and therefore monotheistic. Kabir Das argued that he was Nirguna, he was the Brahman, the entire world, and so he didn't have any form at all. That is what was the dispute between the two. For some reason, in later years, we find that Ravidas veered around to the idea of Nirguna Brahman. He gave up the idea of, looking at God as anthropomorphic and Saguna Sampanna or Saguna. You can simply use that without the Sampanna. He veered around to the view that indeed it was pantheism, and it is also his, it is also uh, Nirguna. Now, the writer of this work, Ratnavali, claims that this happened due to a Vedic education that was imparted to uh, Ravidas, because the Vedas do not talk about do not talk about monotheism, and uh, it also doesn't talk about anthropomorphism. So this author claims that it was his exposure to the Vedas and the Upanishads that led to his being changing his point of view and accepting the idea of a Nirguna Brahman as God. Ravidas toured extensively all over India. He came even to South India. He came as far as, as far as Tirupati. Okay. Uh, there is documented this thing of Ravidas having visited Tirumala, Tirupati. He also traveled to the Himalayas seeking satsang, because sannyasins went to the Himalayas, so he also went there. He also went to Mount Abu, the Aravali ranges, and he met quite a few Jain scholars there as well. But we do not find too much of uh, an influence of the Jain scholars on Ravidas, nor do we find the influence of Ravidas on the Jain scholars. So one doesn't really know what transpired uh, among these people. He also went to Punjab, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, all those things. And when he went to Punjab, he met Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak was extremely impressed and inspired by the depth of knowledge that Sant Ravidas had. Okay. So you will see, therefore, that there are a lot of stories, not stories as in fictitious stories. Let me say there are lots of accounts about Ravidas that are recorded in the Sikh hagiographical work, which was called the Premam Bodha, Premam, Premam Bodha, Bodha, or that which teaches love. Premam Bodha is teaching love. Okay, this is a Sikh hagiography, and there is a recording of Ravidas's contribution. Uh, Let me clarify something here. I said that hagiography as a word needs to be clarified. Hagiography originally meant the documentation of the lives of Christian saints, nuns, priests, and other holy men and women of the Christian tradition. But over the years, because of the split in Christianity, when it became uh, Catholic and Protestant, at that particular time, uh, hagiographies ceased to be proper hagiographies. They became more and more contentious. They became contentious in the sense that people belonging to the Protestant tradition tried to write hagiographies about Protestant saints. Protestants don't have saints, Protestant priests, nuns, and all of them, and how they were better than the Catholics. Okay. And the Catholics did exactly the same thing, which is, but they glorified the Catholic saints, nuns, priests, and put down the Protestant priests and nuns. Okay, so because of this kind of a thing, what happened is that hagiography uh, gained a pejorative, Pejorative. Pejorative is that which is a negative. It has gained a pejorative connotation over the years. Hagiographies now are not trusted. Okay, when somebody says it's a hagiography, people don't trust it because the story of one is written to the detriment of another. It is for that reason that hagiography has got this pejorative meaning now. But in the context of India, I suppose we don't really have to worry about hagiographies being like this, because these hagiographies are not contending against anyone. Okay, they are just hagiographies. So in India, we don't really have to take the pejorative meaning of uh, hagiography. Now, 41 of Ravidas's poems were incorporated into the Adi Granth, ADI, Adi, Granth, Granth, which was actually the precursor to the Guru Granth Sahib. Okay, we know that the text that is revered by the Sikhs is called the Guru Granth Sahib. The Adi Granth is the predecessor of the Guru Granth Sahib, and later on it became the opening of the Guru Granth Sahib. Opening meaning that the opening section of the Guru Granth Sahib came from the Adi Granth. And in that, 41 verses written by uh, uh, Ravidas were incorporated. Okay, so that shows that the Adi Granth openly venerates and reveres Ravidas, and that his influence on Sikhism was profound. His influence on Guru Nanak was profound. The Premambodha, the text that is a hagiography that I was talking about, which was compiled about 150 years after the death of Ravidas, includes him in the list of 17 sons and gurus of the Indian philosophical tradition. Okay, the Premambodha, it basically has 17 uh, sons and gurus, and one of them is Ravidas. So he has a pretty exalted status. Okay, but unfortunately, in the 20th century, towards the later part of the 20th century, newer hagiographies were written, and these hagiographies are unfortunately written from the point of view of caste. Okay, and therefore, these are the pejorative ones, and these show that Ravidas is constantly in argument with Brahmins and with Muslims. He did not agree with the Sufis, they say, but that is not true. Sufism itself was inspired by the Bhakti movement. And in North India, though in South India the Bhakti movement precedes Sufism, in North India, there is evidence to show that the Bhakti movement and the Sufi movement coexisted, and both of them believed in devotion through songs and singing. Okay, so this is an apocryphal, APOCRIPHAL, apocryphal account. Apocryphal meaning that which is dubious, that which is not correct. Okay, So these hagiographies have unfortunately come into being, and if you come across any of these, please ignore them, because these are not true. These are not true at all. Ravidas's ideas of both the Saguna anthropomorphic God and the Nirguna Brahman uh, were themes that were used in the foundation of the Nath Yoga philosophical tradition. I told you yoga is not just asanas. There are different forms of yoga. Okay. So Nath Yoga is something like a Karma Yoga foundation. And it discusses both this Nath Yoga tradition. Uh, it discusses both the aspects of Ravidas, his early life, where he believed an anthropomorphic God had sagunas, and how he moved on to Nirguna Brahman from that. Uh, One more thing that is important before I forget, that one should remember about Ravidas, as he grew older and wiser. Some people grow old and wise. Some people just grow old, people like me. And Ravidas basically talked about a state of mind, which he described as Sahaj, Sahaj. Sahaj now gets translated into English as that which comes naturally. Okay, that which comes naturally is what people now translate Sahaj into English. But what Ravidas has in mind was more of the Braj Sahaj, not the Hindi Sahaj. Uh, it is the Braj Sahaj, which talks about a confluence of a number of truths written with small t. Okay, a confluence of number of truths that come together. Confluence is coming together, so that's a redundancy. The confluence of these truths that ultimately creates that one truth. Okay, the one truth, which is the Nirguna Brahman and Advaita. Advaita does not distinguish between the Atman and the Brahman as separate entities. Advaita says both the Atman and the Brahman are both constituted very, very similarly. And this, as far as Ravidas is concerned, is something that uh, is a result of Sahaj, where you have reached that wisdom of opening your mind to several possibilities of something, and how all those possibilities converge and become one truth. And this truth is written with a capital T. Okay, because that is the principle that drives the world. So that has to be remembered. In the 20th century, the hagiographies that I talked about, this have come into being thanks to the Dalit tradition. And this Dalit tradition itself emerged uh, because of Ravidas suddenly being characterized as a chamar. So the Dalit tradition that we are talking about here is also not even a tradition that has all kinds of oppressed people or different kinds of Dalits. It is a chamar tradition. Uh, and this particular tradition is against the Bhakti Mal. It is against the Bhakti Mal uh, because the Bhakti Mal claims that he studied the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and all this. Okay, and that he subscribed to the Nirguna uh, Brahman uh, or the Advaita tradition. This is there in the Bhaktimal. It is also there in Ratnavali. Okay, so they disagree with the Bhaktimal, which openly states that he studied the Vedas. Uh, and the Bhaktimal also says that he discussed his ideas with Brahmins. Okay, uh, he shared his ideas with Brahmins. Now, because the whole of Dalitism, as we understand it today, as we see it today, not as we understand it today, posits the other for the uh, Dalits is primarily the Brahmin and those who behave like Brahmins. That is why Mayavati used the term Manuvadi. Manuvadi were supposed to be Brahminical in their thinking. Little did she know that Manu is a Kshatriya. And the Upanishads, which are redacted texts from the Vedas, claim that the Kshatriyas are more important than the Brahmins. She didn't know that, of course. And so you will find that this myth is perpetuated, that he didn't speak to Brahmins, that he didn't have anything to do with Brahmins. He didn't have anything to do with the Vedas, because people believe that Vedas are sacred texts of the Brahmins. And I repeat once again that Vedas are not sacred. They are not like the Bible and the Quran. The Vedas are simply descriptions of geography. They are also descriptions of the Nirguna Brahman. It sees everything as a life system. And as per the Rig Veda, in one family, you could have all the Chaturvarnas. One father could have 4 sons with each of them belonging to different Varnas. Okay, but this is not something that the Dalits will accept. So they wrote the separate hagiographies, which are now pejorative, and they contain the claim that he even spoke to Brahmins. Okay, this tradition also says, uh, the Bhaktimal, also talks about how pure he was of speech. Pure of speech can be interpreted in different ways. Pure of speech is his ability to speak clearly. Okay, or that Sanskrit term which is called Ucharan. Ucharan is the correct pronunciation of a particular term. Pure speech is also speaking the truth. And Ravidas was somebody who was not at all afraid to speak what he thought was the truth. He was not apologetic about uh, his humble origins. He didn't ever say that he didn't feel ashamed of his humble origins. He said, I am from a humble background, but that is his greatness. That is his greatness. And the denial of this by contemporary Dalit scholars is an unfortunate thing. Though they do agree that he was of pure speech and that he was capable of resolving philosophical uh, disputes, they agree to that. But they say he was not a scholar of the Vedas. He didn't talk to the Brahmins. So there is an inherent contradiction here. They're creating a paradox. Uh, the other thing that now becomes uh, clear is that Ravidas has now been appropriated by the Ambedkarite tradition, and that to the Chamars, not the Mahars and other type groupings. It is mainly the Chamars. Okay. So this is the Dalit school now, which has written new hagiographies, which are very, very different from the original hagiographies that I had talked to you about. Now, in the 21st century, we find that there is a creation of, not the 21st century. Yeah, it is the 21st century. Is it? Yes, it is the 21st century. There is a creation of a religion called the Ravidasiya, Ravidassia, Ravidasiya. And this particular religion was a spin-off from Sikhism. Okay, it grew out of Sikhism. It was established by the followers of the teachings of Ravidas. Now, uh, the establishment of this religion was because of the fact that one of the gurus that these people venerated, called Ramanand Das. This is not the Ramananda of Varanasi. This is Ramanand Das. He was, what should I say? He was somebody from the Sikh tradition, but he was a Chamar, and he was assassinated in the year 2009 in the city of Vienna in Austria. Okay, so after his assassination, this religion came into being, Ravidasya, after the assassination of Ramananda Das. Okay, and this religion comprises mostly or only of Chamars. Okay, and these, after this religion came into being, these people decided that they will no longer follow Sikhism uh, because Sikhism also became home to the caste system. It is a very funny thing. When Guru Nanak founded the Sikh philosophical tradition. He was creating a confluence of various things, various good points from Hindu, Muslim, and different religions. Okay, so it was based in eclecticism. It brought together a number of elements, good elements of various different forms of thought. But unfortunately, in this country, everything ultimately ends up with caste. Everything ends up with caste. So Sikhism has also ended up with caste. You have Jat Sikhs, uh, then you have, I think, one of the Congress leaders, Beyant Singh, was it Beyant Singh? I hope that is the correct name. He was a Jat Sikh. And then there are scheduled castes among the Sikhs as well. Though Sikhism says all human beings are equal, somehow people have managed to create castes even in Sikhism. Islam has castes. Christianity, they are asking for Dalit Christian status. Christianity, where does it have Dalits in them? Where are the scheduled castes in Christianity? Where is the caste system in Christianity? But it has percolated. That is our wonderful thing. We have managed to percolate everything with castes. And it's not the work of one caste or two castes, but it is also the work of everyone. Please remember what the Supreme Court once observed. They said ours is probably the only country in the world where everybody is trying to be classified as backward. Okay, while everybody elsewhere in the world wants to be seen as being forward, okay, and developed, we want to show ourselves as backward, and we want to say that we are not developed, which is a sad thing, is what the Supreme Court said. And Ambedkar, before he died in 1956, he did write a small essay in which he said he was very disappointed with the results of the reservation system for which he was responsible. He fought for it, thinking that it will help the Dalits. And he said that reservations have been cornered by some Dalits. And these people now identify themselves with, not with their oppressed people, but once they have attained a higher status in society, they are now identifying with the upper castes. So every caste in this country has contributed to the perpetuation of the caste system. That is something that we must remember. Every caste, the lowest and the highest. Anyway, so they came out of Sikhism, the Chamars, and they created a holy book which they called the Amrit Bani Guru Ravidas ji. Sorry, Amrit Bani Guru Ravidas ji. Amrit Bani is, you know what is Amrit? Amrit is that which gives immortality. But Amrit can also be used to show sweetness. Amrit Bani, Bani is Vani. Vani is the sound of somebody's speech. So Amrit Bani Ravidas ji is the name of this Granth, where his works are compiled. They are very good works, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt about that. And it has something like 240, uh, what should I say, uh, 240 different poems, or whatever you want to call them. Okay, it is the assertion of the Chamars that Sikhism was no longer aiding the development of Chamars. Very much to the contrary, it was something that was creating hurdles in the lives of Chamars, and therefore they said, we are leaving the fold of Sikhism and establishing this new religion called Ravidasya religion. And they basically said that despite the fact that we are now no longer Sikhs and we are Ravidasyas, we, however, respect the 10 Sikh gurus and the Guru Granth Sahib, but they say Guru Nanak is not the supreme guru. The supreme guru is Sant Ravidas. This is the religion of uh, Ravidas, which is called Ravidasya. I told you that Ramanand Das, who was assassinated in Vienna, was somebody who belonged to the Sikh tradition, but from the Chamar section. What was the Chamar section that was headed by Ramanand Das was actually called the Dera Sachkhand. Okay. I have tried to find out what this Dera means. I keep getting this thing that it is some kind of a tent. But I have to try and figure out if it was a tent, why is it called Dera? And even this man who was proved to be a crook, what was his name? Ram Rahim Singh something, Guru Ram Rahim Singh. He himself was called a Dera chief. I don't know what this Dera thing is. I have to work on it a bit. This is not really my subject, as I keep saying. My subject is more Western political philosophy. That's what I've studied more. I'm now a student who's just started researching on this because of the compulsion of teaching this. So I don't understand what the Dera means, and Sachkhand basically means that which tells the truth. Sachkhand. A Kand is a section that tells the truth. Sachkhand. Dera, I am unable to explain to you, so you will please forgive me. And Ramananda Das was the head of this Dera Sachkhand. After him, and after the severance with Sikhism, and after the creation of the new Granth, which is the Amrit Bani Ravidas ji. After that, the Dera Sachkhand was also dissolved, and it became the Dera Sachkhand Ballan, Ballan, Ballan. Now, I don't know what this again means. I have no idea what Ballan means and how Dera Sachkhand Ballan is different from Dera Sachkhand. I couldn't find this yet. Maybe I will find if I keep searching, and I will keep searching. And very interestingly, a political party was formed in 2012 by members of this new religion, Ravidasiya religion. And this uh, party was given the name Be Gham Pura. Okay, please don't write it as Begumpura. Okay, if you write it like that, which is how most people write Begum, technically in Urdu, is the wife of someone. Okay, or a married woman is called Begum. Even though nowadays, I don't know, young girls are named Begum. Uh, but originally, it meant somebody who was married, or somebody who was a wife. And the Urdu speaking Muslims address their wives as Begum. That's Begum, which is very different. This is not Begum like that. This, please write it with an AM, because this again has its source in Urdu. Gham, it's not pronounced gum, it's pronounced gham. Gham is sorrow. Okay, gham basically means sorrow. Be-gham is without gum, without gham, or without sorrow. Okay, so Pura is land. So this particular party called itself Begum Pura, or a land without sadness or sorrow. Okay, so please, in fact, if you can, hyphenate Be hyphen GAM. Don't write GUM, GAM, Begum Pura, which is a land without sorrow. Funnily, I have not heard of this party before. I have only come across this as I was researching on Ravidas. And I don't know where this party exists. It is again supposed to be a party exclusively of Chamars. And some people have claimed that the Madiga movement in the then undivided Andhra Pradesh, and now in both Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, this movement was inspired by this. Manda Krishna Madiga, the leader, is supposed to have been inspired by this. But I don't know if that is true. I've never heard of this party, but apparently this party is there. Now, where do they contest elections? What do they do? I have no idea. So there was this great man about whom there were good hagiographies, and then the pejorative hagiographies came into being. And with that, you have a new political party, a new religion. So that's it. I don't want to go on and on. So this is as far as Sant Ravidas is concerned. But as a closing remark, one has to say that he seems to be one of the most remarkable men that India has produced. that he was able to earn the respect of so many different kinds of people speaks volumes about what kind of a person he was. And that, I think, instead of harping on caste divisions, if we were to accept the fact that even Brahmins prostrated to him, and that Sikhism's Adi Granth had 41 of his verses. And if we go by his poems, sorry, and that he was one of the inspirations of Guru Nanak, if we go by that, and that he's a venerated figure among all castes and communities in central India, western India, northwestern India, then that shows what a great man he was. And I don't think one should lay exclusive claims to him and show him as being in opposition to people. That narrative has to stop. I hope it does. Thank you very much.